We're busting ours to kick yours.
Fun to watch.
Minus 15.
Respect all, fear none.
Into the upper deck.
Intensity is not a curfew.
Oh, mercy.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome into MASN All Access. I'm your host, Paul Mancano. Thanks for tuning in. Hope that from wherever you're joining us, you're safe, you're healthy, and you're with your family. Well, the MLB draft is a little more than 2 weeks away at this point, and the Orioles are in an envious position. Mike Elias and company have more bonus pool money available at their disposal than any other team in baseball. They also hold 3 picks in the top 40, which is more than any other team can say in this 5-round draft. But it's that number 2 overall pick that will draw the most intrigue and attention. Over the next couple weeks, we're going to be introducing you to some guys that might be taken by the O's with that number 2 overall selection. We're going to start today with the top position player on many draft big boards. That would be Vanderbilt's Austin Martin. David Price, Dansby Swanson, Walker Buehler. Vanderbilt head coach Tim Corbin has seen some premier talents come through his program. Austin Martin is one of them.
I feel like he will get there, and I don't think it's going to take him a long period of time. He's a guy that catches on very quick, and he's very confident. This is not a moment or a circumstance that I've ever seen where it becomes too big for the kid.
Martin hit nearly 400 en route to a national championship with the Commodores as a sophomore.
Really what you want out of your All-American, really led the way with 3 hits.
I think his competitiveness certainly permeates through the group. He's a kid that has played at a high level ever since he stepped on campus, which is very unusual.
Martin's power also took off in 2019. His home run total went from 1 to 10 in one season.
I always felt like at some point in time that Austin was going to develop power, and I do think there's going to be another spike in power for him.
But Martin's speed on the base paths might be his best attribute.
He is a very good base runner. He's a base stealer too, but the base running component, this guy can really run the bases. He knows what he's doing.
Martin doesn't have a set defensive position just yet. That's not a bad thing.
He played every position on the field as a freshman with the exception of pitch and catch. And that's every position. Looking at the prospects of a big leaguer, I think he can play second base. I think he can play center field.
Leadership and competitiveness are a must for a top 3 pick. Martin checks those boxes too.
He's just one of those kids that you put him in bigger environments and he plays better and better. And he pushes others around him too.
If the O's are looking for an impact bat and a defensive Swiss Army knife, Martin might be their guy. While Martin might be the most likely option for the Orioles at number 2 overall at this point, there are several other college stars who are likely in the running for Mike Elias. MASNsports.com's Steve Molesky caught up with Jim Callis of MLB Pipeline recently, who broke down the top prospects in this upcoming draft.
Well, let's go back to the top, Jim. What's the best analysis today, a little over 2 weeks out, as to what could happen at the very top there, Detroit and the Orioles?
Okay, number 1, I don't think it's decided, but it would be a big shock to me, and I think a big shock to a lot of people, if the Tigers don't take Spencer Torkelson out of Arizona State. He's first base, probably first baseman. Maybe he could play the outfield. But the bat's just so special, Steve. I mean, he's got the best power in this class, but he also has hitting ability. He's not one of these guys who just swings from his heels and you hope he connects and he'll hit a few home runs when he does. He's got an unbelievable combination of power, hitting ability, plate discipline. I really think from talking to people, he's the best offensive prospect to come out of the draft, that all-around hitting combination, probably since Mark Teixeira in 2001. It is only first base only. It probably is only going to be first base, but I don't think it matters because the bat is that good. And so I think he's going to be the guy who goes number 1. I mean, I've had some scouting directors tell me they think he could step right into the big leagues right now and hold his own. So I think he's definitely going number 1. I would say, and again, I don't think the Orioles have locked anything in yet. If for some reason Torkelson doesn't go number 1, I think Mike Elias and company would say, thank you very much. Here's Spencer. We're turning Spencer Torkelson's card in. We got him. So Torkelson's going to go 1 or 2. I think he's kind of head and shoulders above everybody in this draft class. So if he goes 1, I don't think it's a clear-cut decision at 2 yet. Austin Martin is number 2 on our prospect list. He's been, famous for a long time. A very good player at Vanderbilt. Led the SEC in hitting and on-base percentage last year. It's the best conference in college baseball. Put up better numbers this year. Won a national championship. I think there's some question as to where he's going to play. I think teams were hoping to see him at shortstop this year, and he didn't win the shortstop job. He opened the year at third. Didn't throw well. Looked kind of tentative. So they moved him to the outfield, just center. Is he a center fielder? Is he a third baseman? Is he an offensive second baseman? That's a little unclear. He is the best pure hitter in this draft. I think he'll probably have average power, solid runner, good instincts. My guess is he's a center fielder or second baseman. So really good player, but I don't think he's a lock at number 2. I think you can make a case. I think that there are a number of teams that would have Asa Lacy from Texas A&M ahead of him, Steve. He's a lefty who has, plus to well above average, fastball, slider, changeup, curveball's pretty good too. Misses a ton of bats, left-handed, great track record. He's the best pitcher in this draft. Now, the argument may be for not taking him, not that you draft for need or demographic, but if you go pitcher at 3, if you took Asa Lacy at 3, and let's say that you were predisposed, okay, we're going to go hitter, pitcher, hitter, we want to balance maybe. There's going to be really good pitchers available at 30, much more so, I think, than the hitters will be available at 30. So that might push you a little bit more if things are even to go and hitter. There's been some talk that the Orioles, and you hear this talk toward the top of the draft every year, the team could cut a deal and save a bunch of money and go big, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Orioles can probably go big anyway because they have the biggest bonus pool, and they pick 30 and 39. But there's been talk, maybe they cut a deal with somebody like Nick Gonzalez, who's a second baseman out of New Mexico State. He's played shortstop this year, but he's going to be a second baseman. He's kind of similar tools to Martin. He didn't play in the SEC. New Mexico State's a high-altitude place. It's a great place to hit. But he proved himself in the Cape Cod League by being MVP last summer. So you could, there's a school of thought that maybe if you think Martin and Gonzalez are close, you could take Nick Gonzalez because he might go 6 or 7. You could save an extra, million and a half, whatever, and then go crazy at 30. But those would probably be my 3 guesses right now. Jonathan Mayo just did a mock draft for us that came out 2 days ago, and I'm just starting to work on one. And so I haven't really thought about who I would put number 2 because I don't have to write it till next Wednesday. But it would probably be one of those 3 guys, Martin or Lacy, or if they cut a deal, Nick Gonzalez would probably be the 3 names I'd hear the most.
Just for a frame of reference, Adley Rutschman, of course, went 1-1 to the Orioles last year. Would he grade higher than the players you just discussed?
Yes, he would because he's a catcher and a potential Gold Glove catcher. And I think I put Torkelson's total offensive package ahead of Rutschman's. And in part because Adley, if he's a catcher, that's going to wear him down some. And Torkelson could probably be in the lineup 150 games a year. And Adley's probably more like 110, 120 or so. But, I put Adley ahead of these guys. If I'm just comparing them offensively, I'd say Torkelson has more power. I mean, Torkelson's power is ridiculous. Adley's got plus power. And I think Torkelson and Adley Rutschman are comparable in terms of hitting ability and plate discipline. So with Torkelson, you'd be getting more power, but you're not getting a potential Gold Glove catcher. Maybe if they got Torkelson somehow, that would be pretty amazing. But I just don't think that can happen. But that would be to imagine those 2 guys in the middle of the lineup. That would be pretty exciting.
So, Jim, are there legit concerns about Martin shoulder?
I don't think concerns that he can't throw. He's had some minor arm injuries in the past. He at times looks tentative making throws. I mean, when you're at the top of the draft, you're really under the microscope. I think if we were talking about Austin Martin being like a back half of the first round type of guy, we wouldn't hear as much. But because he's been, in that discussion to go 1-1, he's been on the top of prospect list, at or near the top for everybody. It gets a little bit more under the microscope. It's not that he can't throw. It's I think I've talked to a lot of people. I did a Torkelson versus Martin story, so I talked to a lot of people about both guys. I think, and different teams will look at him different ways. So I'm sure there are some teams that would say, like, there may be a team that will say, hey, let's just, this isn't going to be a normal year in 2020, so who knows? But 2021, let's run him out at shortstop and just see what it looks like, even though he didn't play there at Vanderbilt. Maybe and see, and maybe you try him at third base. I think there are certainly teams that would give him a shot to play more challenging positions. I think the consensus among most teams, and I don't know, I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly what the Orioles think, is that the arm would probably be a stretch at third base. Like you just haven't seen enough consistency to feel really good about him at third base. And that he's probably a center fielder or a second baseman. I don't see why he couldn't play second base. The arm requirements there aren't nearly as good. He's a good athlete. He's got infield actions. I think he's played there some as a freshman. So I think you're looking at a guy who could be, a solid second baseman or an average to solid center fielder and a really good offensive player. So he comes with a pretty high floor, but like I said, I think, again, if you're picking him 2, 3, wherever, you probably like to have a little bit more certainty as to exactly where you're going to play him. And you just don't have that right now. And again, because we had less of a season, he lost basically 3 months out of his college season because they would have gone far. You didn't really get to see him in center field and how much better he would have gotten over the course of the year.
Jim, always love getting your insights. Jim Callis, MLB.com and MLBpipeline.com. Draft coming fast. And Jim, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, yeah, no problem, Steve. Always enjoy talking with you, talking draft. And it should be a big day for Orioles fans with picks 230 and 39. They should get 3 pretty good players.
Well, Steve's got a lot more where that came from. He's got interviews with Gary Kendall, Grayson Rodriguez, Ryan Mountcastle, and many more. Head to MASNsports.com to check out the latest from Steve Molesky. We're continuing our 20 in 20s, highlighting 20 players to keep your eye on in the Orioles system in 2020 and beyond. Got a familiar name on the list today, Cedric Mullins. Cedric Mullins wants to put 2019 behind him.
The intent this offseason was to put the past in the past and just keep pressing forward.
But it wasn't all that bad.
A tremendous speed in center field.
After landing back in the minors, Mullins found his footing in Bowie.
It was humbling, being able to go back to square one and, just see what created success for the future.
The 25-year-old shined in the Eastern League playoffs with 5 extra base hits.
And it is out of here! A home run, Mullins!
And the center fielder isn't ready to be written off just yet.
Cedric looked like his old self. This kid can still get the ball. He's still a base-stealing threat, and the pop returned late in this year.
Remember, Mullins was the Orioles' opening day center fielder in 2019 before heading back down to Norfolk in April and then to Bowie in July. Between all 3 levels, Mullins hit .233 with 10 homers and 43 RBIs. He did rack up 33 stolen bases. Only Jonathan Villar had more in the entire Orioles organization. And Mullins is still only 25, so hopefully he can climb his way back up to Baltimore at some point. Next up is a AA player who got a taste of AAA at the end of the year, Rylan Bannon. At 5'7", Rylan Bannon doesn't strike the same imposing figure as some of his counterparts, but the 23-year-old infielder packs a punch.
A no-doubter, Bannon his second home run with the Tides. It is a 3-run blast.
I am a smaller guy, so I started doing the leg kicking and I found some more power, which was fun to play with.
Bannon's high on-base numbers and defensive versatility make him a unique prospect.
I definitely feel more comfortable at third just because that's where I've played the past 4 or 5 years consistently. But I'm definitely feeling comfortable at second base as well.
After some exposure to AAA ball in 2019, Bannon could be eyeing a call-up sometime in 2020. Bannon played 110 games in Bowie before his promotion to Norfolk. Between the 2 levels, he hit .266 with 11 dingers. 3 of those came in his 20 games with the Tides. Bannon split time between third base and second base in Bowie, but he was used exclusively at third in Norfolk. He certainly looked good in big league spring training back in February. Well, this time without baseball has been a time of reflection for many, a time for reminiscing on the joys and despairs of fandom and the strange middle ground in which we're left without sports. For Danny Smith, it's a time to think back on his days spent with his late grandmother, who nurtured Danny's love for the Orioles.
I became an Oriole fan because I stayed with my grandmother when I was a kid. I didn't really stay at home all that much. So the TV was on every single night. We could be losing 10-0 and we'd watch it all the way through. You look back on that sort of stuff while this is going on.
Here's the 1-1 delivery. That is at the right field!
I remember staying up for the final game of 2011. We watched the whole game, stayed up through the rain delay.
They did it! The Orioles have beat the Red Sox! 2 runs, bottom of the 9th inning!
To see the look on her face and just being able to experience that with her was great, because then that led to 2012.
The first ever American League wild card game goes to Baltimore.
To experience that 2012 season, get to watch the wild card game with her, you know, it meant a lot to me, and that year meant a lot to her because she passed away a couple weeks after that postseason ended. The memories are the most important. At her funeral, we took a Oriole blanket and we covered her with it after everybody left. Put 2 Oriole car magnets in with her. So, yeah, so the Orioles will always be with her.
Thanks to our own Amy Jennings for that great story, and thanks as always to Bobby Blanco and Hannah Broder behind the scenes. We've got a podcast coming out tomorrow. I catch up with Scott Strickland, who's Georgia's head coach. He's the coach of Emerson Hancock, one of the guys mentioned by Jim Callis as a potential number 2 overall pick by the Orioles. Remember, stay home, stay healthy, stay safe. It's only one way we're getting through this, and that is together. I'm Paul Mancano. We'll see you later.